The Eagles return to the field today with OTAs, and Jim Schwartz, the Eagles defensive coordinator, spoke for the first time really since he was introduced. And there's a lot of questions that he answered. He went on for about a half an hour today, PT, and there was a lot out there on the table to kind of chew on now with John McMullen, who was there for 97.3 ESPN.com. He joins us now with what the new DC had to say about his new 4-3 wide 9 personnel. And we also found out a couple other of nuggets about Eagles OTAs today. Ruben Randall, PT, with gallbladder surgery.
Yeah, I wondered why you were asking me about gallbladder surgery until I read John's article.
He is out. And also an illness today for Ryan Matthews. He missed practice as well. And, of course, Fletcher Cox not there. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of it all with John McMullen here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN as we take a look at the Eagles OTAs. Jim Schwartz speaks today, and he spoke for about a half an hour. There was a lot to chew on there. We'll start off with, realistically, I think Fletcher Cox is probably the biggest story of everything. Him not being there was that high on the priority list for Jim Schwartz to get him in. Did he seem concerned that his best defensive player isn't there when he's installing his defense?
No, he kind of played it off, and as we expected, just said it's voluntary, sort of everything that Doug Peterson has said in the past. And while it is voluntary by technicality, obviously everybody's there except for 2 players. So we kind of understand there's issues going on with Fletcher Cox, and Jim just tried to play it off and say he can only worry about players that are here and talk about players who are here because he doesn't even know Fletcher. He's a new defensive coordinator, and he hasn't been around for off-season work. So he kind of deferred to that. But we all understand he's the star of this defense, and when he does eventually show up, he's going to be put in at the 3 technique, and he's going to be expected to produce at a very, very high level. There's no question about that.
All right, John, some of the things that I was interested to hear from Schwartz, full disclosure, I did not hear him today. He spoke right around 1 o'clock, so I was unable to access that to hear it. So did he answer, was he asked about the wide 9 and how much they will play of the wide 9? Because people hear wide 9, they get a little concerned considering 2011, 2012. Was he asked about how much wide 9 they'll play?
No, he didn't get into that as much because remember when he was introduced, when Doug was hired, he kind of went through that process and explained to people that the wide 9 is not a defense. It's a scheme used occasionally in a 4-3 set, and he will use it, and he's had a lot of success with it. But I think, as you mentioned, it turned into a dirty word here in Philadelphia with Juan Castillo. But people assume it's a defense. It's not a defense. He will use it, but not exclusively.
Yeah, and Fletcher Cox, as he kind of alluded to, in the press conference today, that he was drafted into a system that was similar to that when he came to Philadelphia. But he mentioned something that the guys changing position is not important as changing in philosophy, which he's got a lot of guys changing position in this. So I guess that's a pretty important statement by him.
Yeah, it is. And Jim's always been very, very upfront about he's the type of guy that will look at his talent and take advantage of what they do best and sort of go from there and try to mask their deficiencies and accentuate their talent. So to me, that's the definition of a good coach. That's why I'm very excited about Jim Schwartz being here, because he's not the hammer the square peg into the round hole type of guy, which we had in the past with both offense and defense with Chip Kelly and Bill Davis. This is a guy who is going to look at the talent he has on hand and utilize it the best way possible. Now, it's going to be a 4-3 scheme because he believes in that. And a lot of players on this defense are better suited for that scheme, starting with Fletcher Cox, who is just a traditional 4-3 under tackle, and he's got a chance to be a very good one. We talked about Brandon Graham, as a natural weak side pass rusher. We always talk about Vinny Curry. The one guy who doesn't seem like a great fit is Connor Barwin, but he's so well regarded with this coaching staff. He's been out there again today at right defensive end as the starter, and we'll see how he develops in that particular position. But the Eagles certainly have a lot of confidence in him.
All right, a couple other things from Schwartz today. You know, they brought in a lot of guys from the Bills. Did he have any input on that? Did he have a hand in that? Was he just kind of along for the ride?
No, he certainly had an input in that. Specifically, as you mentioned, all three of the guys he brought in, Leotis McKelvin at cornerback, Nigel Bradham at linebacker, Ron Brooks as a nickel corner, they all had career-type years in Jim Schwartz's defense. So, if anything, they have kind of a leg up because they understand what they're in for. They understand what they're expected, what is expected of them. And right now, both we expect McKelvin and Bradham to be starters, but even Ron Brooks has been the starting nickelback. Now, Nolan Carroll's not back and completely healthy, so that can shift. But you can see those guys have a sort of a confidence and a little bit of swag in this defense, while everybody else is in the install period, and their heads are kind of swimming, is what Jim described it as. So, if anything, this early in camp, those guys have a leg up.
How about Marcus Smith, John? Any plans for him been revealed yet?
Well, Marcus is a talented guy. And if you look at him, he just looks like a football player. And I know everyone uses him as the perfect example of what went wrong with the draft and Chip Kelly and Howie Roseman. Right now, he's going to be used as a defensive end, and the thought process behind that is to simplify things for him. Instead of having all these pieces of the puzzle on his plate as far as, one play's got to rush the passer, one play's got to drop into coverage. He struggled with all that. All of a sudden, now he's in a one-gap attack scheme, and we'll see if the default setting of talent shows up. Clearly, he's been beaten down. Clearly, he's fourth on the list behind Barwin and Graham and Curry. But he's going to get an opportunity. He's going to make this football team because they think he has talent.
Now, Jim Schwartz has said he doesn't judge players early, but we certainly do. Are there some things that you've seen defensively that have stood out to you, or did he reveal anything that, oh, yeah, because usually you just get that vanilla stuff.
Well, he did go vanilla for the most part, except for safety, where he said he was even, being a bit of a hypocrite because he said, don't judge anything this early because the guys are not really competing. They're just trying to improve their technique. But he did say Malcolm Jenkins and Rodney McLeod, they're on line for being one of the best safety tandems in this league. So he's very, very comfortable with that particular position. And he even mentioned it. He said he kind of went off his school of thought, and he made these assertions about those players because he has that much respect for Malcolm and Rodney.
John, you just wrote over at 973ESPN.com about the OTAs, and then you wrote in there that we've seen some significant shakeups on Jim Schwartz's defense. What are some of the things that you would consider a shakeup?
Well, the biggest was that Jalen Mills got a lot of first-team reps at cornerback in place of Eric Rowe. So I think that took us all by surprise. And Jim tried to downplay it and said if you show up tomorrow, which we can't because it's not open to the media, but things would change. And he's just trying to get a look at different players against different players on the other side of the ball. So in the case of Mills, he said, he's been playing a lot against rookies, as he should as a fellow rookie, and he wanted to see him against the top-tier wide receivers. He got a look, but there's no question on the sidelines there were a couple occasions where Jim Schwartz and the D-backs coach Corey Unlin were yelling at Eric Rowe about his technique. So if there's one storyline that's developing early, it's that opposite corner position, opposite of Leotis McKelvin, is going to be wide open as we get to training camp.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a surprise because what we had kind of previewed yesterday, we thought Mills could be in the mix for the nickel spot. Anything revealed there?
No, in fact, because he was starting on the outside, he didn't even get any reps at nickelback. Nickelback it's been Ron Brooks' job early on. Now, again, Carroll is not out there in team drills, so that'll shake things up a little bit because he's going to be an impactful player on this team. But as I look forward, to me, it's shaping up as a battle between Nolan Carroll and Ron Brooks inside at the slot, and then the other battle will be Jalen Mills against Eric Rowe on the outside.
John, let's flip over to first off, I want to get real quick on the cornerback spot. We talked about Nolan Carroll yesterday and Ja'Cory Shepherd. Neither guy cleared to practice again today, right?
That's correct, in team drills. So Nolan's done some work in individual, but he hasn't gone full bore. And that's understandable. And Ja'Cory also, because they're both coming off significant injuries. So there's no need to jump them in there and sort of get them started this early. But it hurts Shepherd more than Carroll, obviously, because they know more about the veteran. And all of a sudden, because they have so many bodies at cornerback, if you're not out there as a young player at this point of the game, it's going to affect you when it turns to August and the competition really heats up.
How about the kicker, John, Cody Parkey? Is he in a competition this year?
Well, we'll see. I think they assume if we see the Cody Parkey of a couple years ago, he's not in a competition. But that core muscle injury really affected him, obviously, before he went on injured reserve and was lost for the season. I think the hope that is he's healthy and he becomes the kicker he was as a rookie, and all of a sudden that guy's much better than Caleb Sturgis. So we'll just have to wait and see, Pete, to see how healthy he is, because if he's anywhere near 100%, he's going to be better than Sturgis.
All right, we'll flip over to offense. Some interesting notes on the offensive side of the ball. Ruben Randall missing today after undergoing gallbladder surgery. That's some interesting news there. I don't know how long that leaves a guy out for, but some interesting revelations there that we had not heard before. I don't know, was he having some issues leading up to that, or was that just I woke up one morning and I needed surgery?
Yeah, that's how we got the information. We woke up this morning and he got a text message and said he had gallbladder surgery. So
wow.
He seemed fine last week when he was out there. He was certainly looking like one of the better receivers on this team. So obviously it wasn't hampering him a week ago, so it had to be relatively recent. And it's a concern because he's a guy they're counting on to be in the mix at wide receiver, which there's a lot of unproven talent on this team at that position. And Randall's the one guy, along with Jordan Matthews, who's kind of done it at least a pretty high level in the NFL.
Ryan Matthews out sick today, John. No Darren Sproles, of course. So who got the most reps at running back, and how did they look?
Well, that was Kenyon Barner, and that's a scary proposition. But that's, we talk about, obviously I'm sick, and I still went through practice, but Ryan Matthews couldn't. But, no, I'm just joking there. But you talk about Ryan's history of not being available, and that's been one of the knocks on him. And, it's not that big of a deal in May that he's not out there. And we all know that when Matthews comes back and Sproles hopefully comes back, you're not going to have to count on Kenyon Barner. But all of a sudden, when you look at a guy who has that injury history and you look at a guy who's 33 years old like Sproles, you start to wonder and say, are we going to need this depth? And I don't think anybody in Philadelphia would feel very comfortable if Kenyon Barner was getting a significant number of snaps in the regular season.
All right, everybody wants to hear about the quarterback situation. So who looked the best today of the quarterbacks?
I'm going to go Sammy D. Sam did not look good last week, but this week he seemed to have his we always talk about the arm talent. Jeff Fisher would always say that thing about Sam when he was in St. Louis, that the ball would never hit the ground in practice. There's no question his arm talent is there. but he's always excelled in sort of 7-on-7 drills and when there's not a live pass rush. And he was back to being that Sam Bradford today. The problem with Sam is when the bullets are flying and the pass rush is coming, everything kind of breaks down. He's not the same guy on the football field. But for one day in May, he should be the best quarterback of this group, and I thought he was, at least for this day today.
Has that blown over, all the Bradford, Wentz, all that stuff? Is that even anything that's discussed?
No, yeah, that's completely blown over. And the quarterbacks, there was an hour locker room availability. They didn't even show up today, so they're kind of smart to sort of fend off that kind of stuff. Well, I shouldn't say that because I was in there for about 45 minutes. If they did show up, it was for the last 10 minutes or so, but they're smart enough to kind of avoid that stuff. And they're working through it. And we kind of said it was going to be awkward at first, and then it would move on. And we're on to that moving on period. People have kind of forgotten about it. Certainly the team is not concerned about it at all. That doesn't change Sam's reality, and he's still going to have troubles at times because he's not sort of the future of this team, and Carson's is heir apparent. But as far as their working relationship, I think they've gotten past any of that awkwardness.
You talk about moving on, John. I'm going to read a line from you from this Eagles email that says, all OTA practice sessions will be open in their entirety to the media. However, photography, yada, yada, yada. So how pleased are you that the Eagles have moved on?
Which is different from Buffalo.
That is true. Buffalo got a lot of criticism because of, trying to fend off. And sometimes these organizations are kind of funny because they think they're dealing with CIA-level secrets. And, somebody reading 973ESPN.com or the Philadelphia Daily News or the Philadelphia Inquirer, if we're giving away your secrets and that's going to cause the Dallas Cowboys to beat you, you probably got bigger issues. So I think most organizations understand that. And the Eagles have always been very good as far as PR savvy, and they have no issues. But everybody has a little of sort of that clandestine nature, and they don't want you photographing team drills, and that's understood. But really, even if we did, it wouldn't affect the competitive balance by any stretch of the imagination.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, at JF McMullen on Twitter, as the Eagles continue OTAs tomorrow. And we'll have more full report from the NovaCare Center as the Eagles continue this week, next week, and then the mandatory start the following week after that. So still a couple of more weeks of practice and stuff, and then training camp will be here before we know it. And we'll have full reports on everything Eagles as we get a little closer with John, and all things NFL at 97.3 ESPN.com. Thanks, John.
Hey, thank you, guys.